I found the note before I found the anger. A torn scrap of paper abandoned on our kitchen table between cold Christmas leftovers and my grandmother's shaking hands. We used your $8.500 for the family cruise. Take care of Grandma. V. No, sorry. No explanation. Just orders and an empty house where laughter should have been. They'd taken my savings, drained Grandma's card, and sailed off with a stranger I didn't even know was part of family. But what they didn't know was what I'd already started planning. Before I tell you what happened next, let me ask you something. Where are you watching from? And hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by the people who were supposed to protect you. If you've ever carried the weight for everyone else only to be left behind when it mattered, this story will feel painfully familiar. I didn't grow up in a home full of shouting. In my house, the cruelty was quiet, delivered through small choices, tiny omissions, and the way people looked past me like my presence was just convenient. My earliest memory of that truth came during Tyler's 8th birthday. The kitchen smelled like cheap pizza and melting frosting. Mom cut the cake without hesitation, corner piece for Tyler, thick middle slice for Chloe, the decorated one for Dad. She paused only when she reached me. We're running low. You don't mind a smaller one, right? You're my reasonable one. Even at 6, I knew reasonable meant less. That pattern followed me everywhere. In middle school, when I won first place at the science fair, I scanned the bleachers for my family. Tyler was laughing at his phone. Chloe posed for selfies. Dad chatted with a coworker, and Mom didn't even look up until I stood right in front of her. "Oh, good job, honey," she said, already turning back to Tyler. "Show your sister that clip." The moment was over before it began. I swallowed it like I always did. By high school, the roles in our family were fixed. Tyler was the man of the house, despite losing every job he touched. Chloe was sensitive, which meant she never faced consequences. Dad was trying, which excused everything from drinking to disappearing. And me, I was the one who filled the cracks. Quietly. Reliably. My first paycheck was taken before I'd even opened the envelope. "Just until we pay the gas bill," Mom said, sliding it out of my hand with a practiced smile. "We'll pay you back." They never did. When Chloe called crying about her car dying in a mall parking lot, I skipped buying my own textbooks to send her money. When Tyler nearly got fired for a client misunderstanding, Dad called me at 2 a.m. "You're the only stable one," he whispered. "Don't let your brother's life fall apart." And like a fool, I said yes. But the moment that should have opened my eyes came 3 years before the cruise. Mom's car had broken down, so I picked her up from work. She got into my passenger seat, clutching a folder stuffed with papers, timesheets, reimbursement forms, all marked up with whiteout and overwritten numbers. "If anyone from the office calls," she said, staring straight ahead, "tell them you picked me up from a client's house. Not here." "Mom, this looks like..." "Don't start," she snapped, then softened. "Please, Jordan. You're the only one I can trust." I covered for her. Of course I did. And the whole time I told myself these things were normal, that every family leaned on one person more than the others, that this was just my role. But everything shifted the year Grandpa died. At his funeral, held in a dim church basement that smelled like coffee and old hymnals, Mom took Grandma's hand and said, "You shouldn't stress about money anymore. Give me your login. I'll manage everything." Grandma hesitated, but grief makes people reach for security, even false security. She wrote her password on a sticky note and handed it over. Something knotted in my stomach, but I buried it. I didn't know then that this was the moment everything began to rot. After Grandpa died, things changed fast but quietly. Mom became in charge of Grandma's finances overnight. She started showing up with folders highlighting urgent expenses that somehow always aligned with Tyler's overdue car payment, or Chloe's need for new equipment to grow her brand. And Grandma trusted her. Of course she did. She'd trusted her for 50 years. I still tried to believe the best. Even when Grandma whispered, "My pension seems smaller this month," and Mom brushed it off with, "The government's cutting back, Mom. It's not your fault." But the truth was already there. I just wasn't ready to see it. Then came the family meeting a few weeks before Christmas. The living room smelled like cinnamon candles and cold takeout. Chloe complained about rent. Tyler pitched a business idea that sounded like the prologue to a lawsuit. Dad nodded through all of it with a beer in his hand. Finally, Mom turned to me. "We need a little financial help this year, 8 or 9,000. Just until after the holidays. I've already covered..." "You're the stable one," she cut in. Your siblings are struggling. Grandma's on fixed income. It has to be you. Grandma's eyes dropped. She knew what was coming the same way I did. And still I agreed. Conditioning is a powerful thing. I took out a personal loan. They promised a repayment plan. They promised a simple, quiet Christmas. They left the next morning for a cruise without a word. That was the first betrayal. The second came when I opened Grandma's old ledger. She kept every deposit recorded since 2016. The entries shifted halfway through that year, different handwriting, different pen. Mom's handwriting. The numbers didn't match the official statements. Some were erased and rewritten. Some months didn't add up at all. Why didn't you tell me I asked? Grandma stood in the doorway, robe tied tight around her small frame. Your mother said you work too much, she whispered. She said I shouldn't burden you. Hearing that felt like watching someone twist a knife slowly. The final crack came from something I had missed months earlier, a voicemail from Emma. I pressed play expecting something small, maybe a holiday message. Instead, her voice shook through the speaker. Jordan, I know Tyler would kill me for saying this, but they used your loan. They used Evelyn's card. Vanessa said you're too distracted to notice. I'm sorry. I just didn't know what else to do. Her voice broke at the end. Emma, who barely spoke above a whisper during family dinners, was the only one who tried to warn me. After that, every excuse I'd made for them disintegrated. And the final confirmation came through the one place none of them remembered existed: the shared cloud account. Old invoices, screenshots, chat backups, all stored automatically. I opened a deleted thread between Mom and Chloe. We'll use Jordan's loan. They never question anything. Grandma won't miss a few hundred. Make sure Tyler deletes that message. There it was. The truth, casual, deliberate, typed out in their own voices. My hands went cold. Not shaking, not angry, cold. Because suddenly everything aligned: the smaller pension deposits, the urgent bills, the shifts in handwriting, the never-ending emergencies. And for the first time, I wasn't confused. I was done. The morning after Christmas, the house felt wrong too. Still too clean, like someone had paused life mid-breath. Grandma slept in her recliner, the blanket slipping off her shoulder. I moved quietly, gathered the note, the receipts, my phone, and sat at the table. The first escalation came fast. When I opened Grandma's bank account, I expected one blow. Instead, I found months of withdrawals. Small at first, $40, $80, $120, then larger ones tied to places neither of us had visited. A boutique Chloe shopped at. A sports bar Tyler claimed he'd never step foot in again. A travel agency charge dated before the family meeting where they pretended to decide on the cruise. My chest tightened, not with shock, but clarity. This wasn't impulsive. This was organized. At noon, Grandma shuffled into the kitchen, eyes tracing the papers. They didn't mean they did, I said. They meant all of it. She didn't argue. That silence told me everything. The second escalation came from a notification I hadn't expected: Chloe's Instagram story. She was stretched out on a deck chair, sunglasses on, holding a champagne flute. The caption, "Finally peace. Family only. Family only." While Grandma ate cold leftovers on Christmas Day, my jaw clenched. I turned off the phone, but the damage had already sunk deeper. Later that afternoon, I dug into our old shared cloud account, something Mom set up years ago to share family photos. They never changed the password. Inside were backup folders labeled automatically receipts, screenshots, message archives. I opened the deleted messages first. Vanessa, we'll use Jordan's loan. They never ask questions. Chloe, make sure Tyler deletes that message. Tyler, Grandma didn't even notice last time. Chill. Each line was a clean slice. The third escalation hit harder. Buried deep in the cloud was the cruise invoice. Not just for Mom, Dad, Tyler, Chloe, and Emma, but for a sixth person, Samantha Ray. The brunette in Dad's photos. The co-worker. The same woman who once brought a pie to Grandma's birthday and called her Evelyn, like they'd been close for years. I printed the invoice and placed it in the center of the table. Grandma stared at that extra name, her fingers trembling. He told me she was from work, she whispered. Her voice cracked. That was the moment anger turned into purpose. The fourth escalation came that night, quietly, almost timidly, through a voicemail I'd missed months earlier. Emma's voice shaking: Jordan, I shouldn't be saying this, but they're using your loan. They used Evelyn's card too. Vanessa said you're too distracted to notice. I'm sorry, I didn't know how to tell you. It wasn't just information, it was confession. Proof from the one person in that family who still had a conscience. The final escalation of the day came from something even smaller, a Google Drive folder Tyler forgot to delete. Inside was a spreadsheet of his business expenses, most of which matched the withdrawals from Grandma's account. It was all there. In their own handwriting, passwords, emails, screenshots. By the time the sun went down, the kitchen wasn't a kitchen anymore. It was a crime scene, neat piles of evidence, each one stacked on top of the last, forming a structure so solid even they couldn't talk their way around it. I felt something shift inside me, not rage, not grief. Precision. For the first time, I wasn't trying to understand them. I was building a case. And when my phone lit up with Madison's name, the lawyer I'd driven months before, I knew the escalation wasn't ending. It was just beginning. When Madison picked up my call, her voice sliced through the haze I'd been drowning in. Jordan, tell me exactly what you found. I laid everything out. Withdrawals, invoices, deleted messages, Emma's voicemail, Samantha's name on the cruise booking. She didn't interrupt once. When I finished, she exhaled slowly. This isn't confusion, she said. This is elder financial abuse and coordinated theft. Don't confront them now. People like this confess more when they think they're still in control. Her certainty steadied me. The escalation wasn't emotional anymore. It was strategic. That night, I opened Grandma's ledger again. The page from the year Grandpa died had been rewritten, whole lines scraped off, numbers rewritten in Mom's handwriting. Dates altered, deposits reduced. The ink pressed harder on certain entries, like she'd been rushing before Grandma noticed. I didn't need Madison to tell me what it meant. Mom didn't start stealing this year. She'd been doing it since the day Grandma became a widow. That realization hardened something inside me. The next morning, the fifth escalation hit. Snowstorm winds hammered the siding. The house shook. And Grandma looked exhausted, older than I'd ever seen her. Your mother said I shouldn't burden you, she whispered. Said you were already doing too much. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was control, isolation, manipulation. And I finally let myself feel the truth. They hadn't taken advantage of a situation. They had engineered it. While Grandma napped, I gathered everything: screenshots, bank PDFs, the invoice with Samantha's name, Emma's voicemail, the ledger photos, the cloud backups. I saved them across 3 locations: my laptop, an external drive, and a second drive I hid inside the lining of Grandma's old winter coat. If the house burned down, I'd still have everything. Around noon, I checked the Reed family group chat again. Still nothing. But Tyler had just posted a selfie from the cruise deck, flexing with a drink in hand. Good people deserve good things. Haters stay pressed. Haters. The person who paid his debts. The person who covered for him at work. The person he called every time he needed saving. The more I read, the colder I became. That night, the 6th escalation surfaced by accident. I was cleaning the living room, unplugging the dying Christmas lights, when I noticed the doorbell camera blinking. Grandma had turned it on the morning they left. The footage showed all of them dragging suitcases, laughing. And then Vanessa adjusting her scarf, saying, "Mom will be fine. Jordan will take care of you. That's what they're for." That line, not said in anger, but in casual certainty, hit harder than anything else I'd uncovered. In her eyes, I wasn't family. I was a function. I replayed it 3 times. It never hurt less, but the last escalation came quietly, almost gentle. Madison emailed me a file, an internal memo from Mom's workplace detailing irregularities, altered timesheets, suspicious expenses, reimbursements flagged. She hadn't been caught, but she'd been monitored. A pattern, a skill set, a motive. Mom didn't manipulate finances because she was overwhelmed. She did it because she was good at it. When I closed the email, something in me locked into place, calm, cold, final. I looked around the living room, the empty stockings, the flickering tree, the abandoned mugs. None of it felt like home anymore. This wasn't a family problem. It was a case. And I wasn't the reasonable one anymore. I cleaned the house, threw out the wilted decorations, set the table with quiet intention plates. Cups folders stacked neatly like evidence for a trial. Then I sat at the head of the kitchen table, with the laptop open, waiting for them to come home. And when I finally heard the crunch of tires on snow, laughter spilling toward the house as if they hadn't left destruction behind, my pulse didn't race. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't scared. I was ready. The escalation was complete. The confrontation was next. They walked into the house like nothing had happened, laughing, stomping snow off their boots, dragging suitcases heavy with souvenirs paid for by the two people they abandoned. Mom's voice hit first. Couldn't you at least turn the heat on? The house feels like a freezer. No hello, no apology, no glance at Grandma. Chloe dropped her pink suitcase with a thud. God, it's depressing in here. Tyler blew into his hands. Relax, everyone. We're home. Dad walked in last with Samantha right behind him. She froze when she saw Grandma, then stepped back like guilt had weight. I didn't stand. I didn't smile. I just said, sit down. They all turned. Something in my tone made them obey. Chairs scraped across the floor as they took their places around the table. Grandma sat at the far end, hands folded tightly. I turned the laptop toward them. Rows of withdrawals filled the screen. Dad squinted. What is this for news? I said. Itemized. Tyler snorted. Jordan, don't be ridiculous. Sid, I repeated. He did. I clicked to the next page, screenshots of chats they thought they deleted. Vanessa, we'll use Jordan's loan. They never question anything. Chloe, Grandma won't miss a few hundred. Tyler, just delete that message, idiot. Their expressions shifted one by one, confusion, then recognition, then fear. Mom leaned forward. This is out of context. I ignored her and pressed play on Emma's voice note. Her shaking voice filled the room. They used your loan. They used Evelyn's card. Vanessa said you wouldn't notice. Tyler shot up. You recorded my wife. She recorded it, I said. Because she was scared. Grandma's voice broke in low, but sharp. Family doesn't steal from each other. Silence punched the air flat. I clicked again. The doorbell footage played Mom adjusting her scarf. Chloe laughing, Tyler dragging luggage, Dad smiling beside Samantha. And Vanessa's voice, clear as a confession. Jordan will take care of you, Mom. That's what they're for. Mom's face drained. That's... My phone buzzed. Madison calling. Perfect timing. I put her on speaker. Jordan, is everyone there? Yes. She didn't soften her tone. My name is Madison Cole. I've reviewed the documents. What I see is elder financial abuse and coordinated theft. Restitution must be made within 48 hours. If not, we file. Chloe gasped. Dad swore under his breath. Tyler pointed at me. You're destroying this family. No, I said quietly. You did that. I'm just stopping it. Mom slammed her palm on the table. You ungrateful. That's when Grandma stood. Her voice didn't shake. Not this time. Enough, she said. Then she looked at each of them, her children, her disappointments. Get out, Mother, don't out, she repeated. Come back only when you return what you took. No one argued after that. Not really. They left in fragments, confused, angry, muttering, slamming doors because slamming was easier than facing themselves. And when the last door finally shut, the house didn't feel empty. It felt clean. The house stayed quiet long after they were gone. Not the uneasy silence from before, this one felt earned. A stillness with weight. Grandma lowered herself into her recliner, her hands trembling just enough for me to see how much she'd been holding in. You did what I never could, she whispered. I didn't answer. I wasn't proud. I wasn't relieved. I just felt awake. I went back to the kitchen table. The evidence sat exactly where I'd left it, pages of transaction screenshots, the cruise invoice with Samantha's name, Emma's voicemail transcribed word for word. For days, these papers felt like accusations. Now they felt like leverage. My laptop pinged. An email from Madison. Subject: everything is ready. Just say when. Attached was the formal complaint, fully drafted exhibits labeled statements organized chronologically. All it needed was my approval, and one click. Beneath it, she wrote, They thought leaving you behind made you powerless. They were wrong. I leaned back, feeling the truth of it settle into my bones. For years, they'd trained me to stay quiet, stay useful, stay small. But the moment they stole from Grandma, abandoned her on Christmas, and posted their family-only vacation, they gave me something I'd never had before. A reason to stop protecting them. Outside, snow kept falling, covering the driveway in a clean white sheet. I thought about Tyler's smug captions, Chloe's champagne selfies, Mom's voice telling Grandma I would take care of her. I thought about all the times I'd said yes because I didn't know how to say no. That person didn't exist anymore. I closed the laptop gently, as if sealing a plan inside it, and slipped the external drive into the hidden pocket of Grandma's old winter coat. If they tried to twist the story, erase evidence, or pretend this was a misunderstanding, I had everything preserved in triplicate. This wasn't revenge. Not yet. This was positioning, and they hadn't even realized the next move was no longer theirs. If any part of this story hit a nerve, you're not alone. A lot of us grew up carrying weight that was never ours to hold. So before you click away, tell me where you're watching from. And if you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, hit like, subscribe, and share your story in the comments. I read every single one. This chapter is over. But trust me, the story isn't. Not when people like mine still think they can rewrite the truth. Stay tuned.